a hard time reading this story because I usually end up cracking up someplace in the middle, and I usually lose it completely during Linda's. So this story, is called The Sign of the Cross. I lived under perpetual threat of crucifixion. Really, every day. Other parents threatened their rambunctious and unruly children with slaps, smacks, and the occasional, "I'm gonna kill you." My mother had a flair for the dramatic. "If you don't stop doing that right now, if you don't do your homework, if you don't dry those dishes, I am gonna crucify you." My friend Linda was horrified. The image of me, my brother, and sister nailed to crosses, being dragged through the streets of Massapequa Park until finally propped up on our front lawn seemed too brutal. Somehow worse than a quick and simple homicide. Crucifixion. I shrugged it off. An empty threat. My mother didn't keep a stack of 2x4s on hand to build 3 crosses or have nails long enough and strong enough to hammer us into place.
And mine is called Crucified. When I was a kid in Massapequa, I hung out mainly with 3 friends, Barbara, and Ronnie. 2 of them were Jewish, but one of the Barbaras was a half-breed like me, only with an Italian mother instead of an Italian father. We used to joke that you almost never saw my father and her mother together in the same room. They were so much alike, we suspected they might be the same person. Just this year, we learned that they grew up just 1 block apart in Sunset Park, Brooklyn. We would hang out at each other's houses after school and on weekends, but I was at her place more than she was at mine. My mother once asked me why, and I said something about there being more noise in her house, and I liked that. The noise at Barbara's house came mostly from her Neapolitan mother. Except for the show albums I would play on my mother's console record player, my house was as quiet as a morgue. Seldom were voices raised, and then only behind closed doors. If I was deemed unruly, I would get sent to my room. Not a big punishment for an introvert. Once or twice, I got the back end of a hairbrush. Of course, I was a perfect child, so I can't imagine why. Barbara's house was another matter entirely. She was the oldest of 3 kids. I was an only child. The presence of 2 other beings vying for their mother's attention was something new to me, and I watched their interactions like I would watch a documentary. There was the jockeying for position, the false accusations, the petty betrayals. It was all there. I loved it. Cries of, "He started it," and "She touched me," filled the room. Barbara's mother bubbled over with stress and emotion. You could see it in her body language. And finally, she would break. She was usually in the kitchen when this happened, stirring a big pot of sauce or doing something to get ready for the evening meal before she had to run out to her second job. She would turn around, wipe her hands on her apron, and brandish a wooden spoon in the direction of the offending child. Then it came loud and clear. "If you don't shut up, I'm going to crucify you." The first time she said this in front of me, I was utterly and completely horrified. I had never heard anything like it. My exposure to crucifixion came from those horrible scenes in The Greatest Story Ever Told. It was a bloody, gruesome, headache-inducing, pain-in-the-gut kind of scene that we Protestants hardly ever talked about. Our crucifixes are empty. Catholic crucifixes have himself hanging from the cross. To me, it was an unthinkable thing to say to a child. But it ran off Barbara and her sibs like water down a duck's back. The kids had been waiting for it. They giggled, then stopped, and usually dispersed. They had achieved their goal of making Mommy explode. Ultimately, nobody was ever crucified, no blood was shed, and life went on. But when Barbara's mother became my Girl Scout leader, along with my mother, I minded my P's and Q's, let me tell you. She just might have had a hammer and nails in that huge green purse of hers.